Hello, how the tech are you? I assume everybody on the panel is doing tech and great because I've asked a couple times now and it's the same every time.
Same every time.
Yeah, good. Well, this is our weekly tech show on Echoplex Media. We talk about technological stuff and sciencey stuff and whatever we feel like doing this each week. Oftentimes we cover news. I usually cover news stuff and anything I'm interested in this week. This week I have some science and I'm gonna start teaching some stuff. So specifically, my first topic is monkeypox. Oh my God, we're all gonna die. Not really, but I'll cover like what's happening and you know why or if we should be worried about that. And then my second topic, I only have 2 topics today, is Learn to Lisp Part 1. And my goal with that is to teach HK an actual programming language. In the pink mic.
I am HK Perrin, and I cover mostly software development news, and I've got 2 very interesting stories that are actually a few weeks old, but they're both big news, and one has to do with something that I ran into recently. I'm going to cover Nextcloud 24 releasing, and Brave and Chrome both getting a Flatpak version on Linux. And over to Dave.
Very cool. I'm interested in Nextcloud. Maybe we can roll a Nextcloud and do our show notes on Nextcloud next time. I think we can do that. Anyway, today I just got 2 stories. We got Ubuntu 22.10, the non-LTS. The next iteration of Ubuntu is switching to Pipewire. And I got HP shipping a laptop calling the Dev 1 features System 76's Pop OS, which is really, really interesting.
Cool. And
you can find all of our other podcasts just by typing Echoplex Media into your podcatcher. Make sure that you also follow our YouTube channel, like and subscribe, and follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Echoplex Media to be terrified.
All right. I guess I get started with my first topic on monkeypox. Oh my God. So if you haven't heard, the monkeypox, a viral disease, is going around. It originates in Africa. Specifically, it's an animal transmitted disease that comes from the forested areas of Central and West Africa. Usually it stays in that area most of the time, but we've seen some cases all over the world, and it's a little bit worrisome. Monkeypox is a relative of smallpox and produces similar symptoms, but milder. So it's a little bit scary since smallpox was such a big deal. Luckily, smallpox was completely eradicated. Unfortunately, monkeypox is not. But it's not quite as bad. So there's 2 different versions of monkeypox. One is from West Africa and has a fatality rate of about 1%. And that is the one, luckily, that's spreading. I'd say luckily because the other version of monkeypox is from the Congo, and it has a quite staggering 10% fatality rate. And so we're lucky on that so far. It doesn't normally spread between humans, so directly human to human transfer. And we're not sure what's going on right now. Though it's called monkeypox, the main carrier is actually thought to be rodents. That's why we have it in the United States occasionally, because it gets in some rodents sometimes and can spread that way. It has been known to spread between humans before, but it's been very limited. I think the longest chain that has been recorded of monkeypox transmitting from human to human was about 6 people, and then it stopped. It stopped transmitting. at this stage, so what's happening right now as currently spread, there are 23 cases in Spain, 20 in Portugal, surprising 17 in Canada, 9 in the UK. The US has 1 case. Italy and Sweden each have 1. That's from a few days ago. I didn't see any updates, but so it may be more or less cases at this point. Not sure. Now, this is not a huge number of cases, but they're not sure how it's spread or how people are getting it. And they're really worried that it's human-to-human transfer.
Right. The concern here is probably if people are starting to get it, the concern is probably that it's spreading in the rodent population, and that as people
That's possible too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, at least my concern would be that it's spreading in the rodent population, and that people are going to, as they come into contact with rodents or with other things that come in contact with rodents, they might, more and more people might start getting it. And that's terrifying, actually, because I saw some pictures of it and I didn't like the way that it looked. It looked like something you don't want.
Yeah.
You know, if it's a relative of smallpox, though, does the smallpox vaccine have any effect, or is it different enough that the smallpox vaccine wouldn't work?
I think it's different enough that the smallpox vaccine doesn't work.
Okay.
I'm not positive on that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how hard it is to make a vaccine for monkeypox. I'm guessing it'd probably be a pretty similar method, but we'll see. So since we don't know how it's spreading, even though it's a little scary, like I don't want to like jump to any conclusions. It could be just people who visited Africa recently have been spreading it like to a couple people around them, and it's not going to go any further. Or something else. So it's still pretty low level. It's something to keep an eye on. Probably not something to get too worked up about right now.
Yeah, not at this time.
Not at this time. Cool. Any other questions, comments?
No, it's too early days, I think, for us to really spend a lot of time talking about it. As skeptics, we're maybe, and considering some of the other things we've been talking about during the pandemic, maybe it's best to leave it at just the facts.
Yeah.
I saved this newspaper from like January 2020 because of like the impeachment. I was like, oh, that's notable. I'll put it in the save pile. And then like later I was looking through it and I found that newspaper, and in like this really small section in like the bottom of the paper, it was like, oh, by the way, there's this virus that's going around China that's a little concerning. Like just this tiny little blurb. I was like, oh, man.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a bigger thing right now because people are worked up about COVID-19. Again, we'll keep our eye on it. Tell you any updates if it gets worse. But at this point, all the usual people are on it. The WHO and everything is taking a look, but nothing to be concerned about right now. But they're definitely watching it.
And I guess if people would like to see what kind of lies folks are telling about it, they can watch our Twitch channel just about any night, and we'll be covering whatever.
I'm sure there's plenty.
There'll be plenty of people. There's already plenty of people lying about it, and we do cover that kind of stuff on basically every other show we do in some way. So,
yeah. So moving on to my next topic, Learn to Lisp Part 1. So I want this to be a series. I'm definitely not going to be able to cover all of Lisp in one very short segment here, but I kind of want to do like multiple parts to it. And the goal is to, it's not really to teach you how to write Lisp code, because that would take way too long and there's too much stuff to cover. Mostly what I want to cover is like the interesting features of the language and why you should like learn it and program in it. Maybe not all the time, but when it's appropriate, because it's fun. It's interesting. It's one of those kind of languages that you learn, and it when you're done learning it, like almost everybody says, their concept of programming is totally different after, learning the language.
Isn't that though just because it's a functional programming language and most people are not used to functional programming?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
There's more to it than that. I'm not going to get to it entirely in this section, but I want to get started on it. So I guess I should start with our XKCD cartoon. Do you have that up, Dave?
It is up now.
Yay.
Yay.
I want to read it real quick for the people who are listening in and not actually watching the video. So it's XKCD cartoon. The first panel is guys talking. I think his name is Cue Ball. He says, Lisp is over a half century old and it still has perfect timeless air about it. I wonder if cycles will continue forever. The few coders from each new generation rediscovering the Lisp arts. And in the final panel, there's like a Jedi-looking guy holding a huge stack of parentheses. And he's talking to another stick figure. And he says, these are your father's parentheses. Elegant weapons for a more civilized age. Which is really funny if you know this. I guess it's too early for that. But it was a fun one. So I assume the next image is up because Dave's showing it. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So Lisp is actually the second oldest high-level programming language that was ever made. The first high-level programming language was Fortran. So there was a number of low-level languages that were made before it. It was created by John McCarthy. He's the guy that should be on your screen now with this wonderful meme that I found, image. Kind of one of those demotivational posters. So it's a black and white image of McCarthy with big lettering under it says programming, and then the subtitle is you're doing it completely wrong, which somehow seems appropriate. But Lisp was created in 1958 at MIT. It is based on lambda calculus. If you're deep into programming, you probably have heard of lambda calculus and has probably used it before. Beyond the scope of this section to try and explain it. It takes some work, but it was originally not actually meant to be implemented. It was kind of a research it's not really research language, but like it was just kind of like a concept that was, that John wrote up in one of his papers. But Steve Russell took the paper and implemented the first interpreter on the IBM 704. And it was suddenly a language and people used it. And then from there, Lisp was adopted by the machine learning / AI community. That has to do with John McCarthy was very big in the AI community, machine learning community, early in the days of of AI and machine learning. And there's some question over whether that was a good or a bad thing. But you will actually see stuff from Lisp in a lot of machine learning and AI stuff. I think it's kind of going away now because it's a little more abstracted away now. But it'll still come up sometimes. Any questions so far? Comments so far?
Huh?
No.
Huh? Yeah.
There's all background. There shouldn't be too confused on that.
No, I just think it's interesting that maybe it was like just somebody's idea or like a paper somebody had put out or whatever, and then somebody at IBM took it and implemented it. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I have no idea what an IBM 704 is, but it's probably
I actually don't either, but it's one of the old big computers.
I bet it's much larger than the computer I'm using now.
Probably.
It's one larger than the IBM 703.
So going into the actual language, I'm just going to cover, to keep this really short, I just want to cover functions, and not even like making a function. We're going to look at calling a function because it's one of the most unique things about Lisp, and the first thing that you'll find when trying to program in it. So in most languages, when you want to call a function, let's say the function is named sum, and you want to send the numbers 3, 4, and 5 to sum. And of course, the function sum will add those numbers together and return the result. Pretty straightforward. So in most languages, what you do is you'd have the function name first, have an open parentheses, and then you'd have 3, 4, and 5 put in the parentheses, separated by commas, probably some spaces to make it a little easier to read, and then you'd close the parentheses. Pretty straightforward. HK, I'm sure that's like every function you've ever called, right?
No, in fact.
No.
It's not just functions, it's like operators too.
Yeah,
so it's treating a function like an operator, which is kind of what we do. I mean, there are certain times where you could do that. You could certainly do that. Like the math.min is kind of an operator. But like in Lisp, everything is an operator and everything is a function.
No, everything's a function.
Yeah, but I mean, like operators are functions in Lisp.
Yeah,
so like it gets really weird when it's like parenthesis plus 3, 4, 5, close parenthesis.
I was going to get to that. You're ruining where I was going, but
oh, I'm sorry.
So in Lisp, to call a function, you basically move that first parentheses to in front of the function name. So then it'd be parentheses, the function name sum, and then the parameters, which are 3, 4, and 5, and then close parentheses. And that is a function call. And you'll notice like one of the odd things is you actually drop the commas. I don't know in Common Lisp, but I know in like in Clojure, which is a Lisp that runs on the JVM, commas are actually white space. So you can just put as many as you want anywhere you want. But most people just leave it off. It's a little bit odd, but kind of made sense. I don't know. But yeah, that's how you call a function. And it looks kind of weird because what you're actually doing, you're not just like calling a function, but to the Lisp interpreter, what it's doing is you're creating a list. The list is denoted by the parentheses. Every time you have the parentheses, you're creating a list. And the list contains the function sum, and then the number 3, the number 4, and the number 5 in order. And after the interpreter reads in that list, it knows to evaluate the list by taking the first item out of the list, assuming it's a function, and applying the rest of the items of the list as the parameters to the function. And that's it. And that's Lisp. And that's kind of like the fundamental thing about Lisp. That's even why it's called Lisp. It's not what I have on the screen, which I'll tell you in a second. But what Lisp actually stands for is list processor. It's short for list processor. Because all you're doing is you're making lists and you're processing those lists. It does not mean what I actually have up here on the screen, lots of irritating superfluous parentheses. That's a backronym.
So Lisp is essentially written in Polish notation, right?
Yeah. I was trying to remember if it's reverse or not. And it's not reverse.
Yeah, reverse would be like you have the operator after the operands. Personally, I think Polish notation makes more sense than like what we usually do, where we say like 3 plus 4, because in the term 3 plus 4, your operator can only ever have 2 operands, but lots of operators can take way more than 2 operands.
Yeah, so the plus operator, which you mentioned before, the function sum, as far as I know, I didn't actually look this up, but I don't think that actually exists in Lisp. But because you have the operator plus, which does exactly the same thing, so it would be open parentheses plus, and then the numbers that you want to add together, and that is how you add stuff together. And then you don't really have to worry about order of operations because you don't have these, random operators that have like infix notation that can be confusing at times. And you have parentheses all the time. So, I mean, it's just nested function calls. It's basically doing a complicated, operators or complicated math, right?
Yeah, you never really need to know order of operations because it never comes up. Nothing is ambiguous in Lisp.
So that's all I wanted to cover this time. It's pretty short, but we'll go in. And my plan is for part 2, we'll talk about a few things about a little bit about functional programming and some stuff that's nice that Lisp has that makes it easier to do. And the reason why everything is in parentheses and is functional like this. Because that should be the next question, right?
It's really nice. There are a lot of really nice things about the way Lisp, like the way you write Lisp. Yeah. But it's very confusing to someone who grew up in America learning the way that we write our math.
It's really confusing. I think if you've used other functional languages, so functional language means a programming language based on functions. For all our listeners out there who might not know, doesn't just mean that it works. It's functional.
Well, it also means the functions don't have side effects.
That's not what it means, but that is something you want to strive for. Yes.
Isn't it all functional languages?
You can
do functional programming in non-functional languages.
So you want to strive for making functions that do not have side effects, and that's something I wanted to cover in the next section. Okay. And we'll go into more detail next time, but I just want to say that you cannot write a program that is only functions without side effects. Because if you tried to do that, all that would happen, since you have no side effects, is your computer would get warm. Of course, the joke is that's also a side effect, so that's not allowed either.
All right, fair enough.
That's all I got. Beginning of list. Oh, actually, one more thing. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, but I am working on a little project that I'll hopefully do some live streaming Lisp coding for anybody who wants to get a little bit more in depth on the workings of Lisp.
And my hopes have been maximally raised.
Not to give too much up or whatever, but it's going to go along with, in a way, another thing that HK has been doing a little bit of live coding with. So should be a lot of fun for people who are interested in one of our other projects. So
yeah, his last live coding session was definitely inspiration. But I do want to say I'm having some trouble getting stuff set up, so that's why I haven't started anything yet, made any hard plans yet. But I'll let you know.
Well, great. Maybe my segment next week will be on what Matt should do to get OBS set up to stream.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. So who do we have next?
All right. So this week I have 2 really cool new releases. One is a new version and the other is a new distribution method. So the first is Nextcloud 24. Nextcloud is a really cool, what would you call it? Like a personal cloud provider. Basically, if you think of Google Drive plus Google Calendar plus Google Contacts plus like it's got various add-ons, things like inbuilt chat. It can work with an OnlyOffice server. It doesn't include an Office server, but it can work with an OnlyOffice server. So you can integrate that. Nextcloud is really cool, and I use it a lot to manage files for my company and to manage my own contacts and my own calendar. So I don't have to rely on Google. And if Google ever decides, hey, that nice account you've got, it'd be a shame if someone were to get rid of it, like Facebook decided, I wouldn't have to worry because I own all my data. All that data that Nextcloud holds is in a server that's like 50 feet that way. So that's really nice. Nextcloud is really nice. And Nextcloud is built on top of PHP. And PHP recently had a new version called PHP 8.1. It is the version that shipped on Ubuntu Server 22.04. And I didn't know that. So I went ahead and upgraded that server that's over there to Ubuntu Server 22.04. And Nextcloud stopped working. So if you have recently upgraded your Ubuntu server to 22.04 and you have Nextcloud and it stopped working, that's why. And what you need to do to fix it is install PHP 8.0 and then upgrade to Nextcloud 24, which just came out and added support for PHP 8.1. Once you're done with the upgrade, you can get rid of 8.0 and reinstall 8.1, and you'll be good to go. So, PHP 8.1 is no longer a barrier to upgrading your Ubuntu server if you have Nextcloud. Or I should say Nextcloud is no longer a barrier to upgrading your server if you use it. And make sure that what you do is you upgrade first to Nextcloud 24, then you upgrade your server to 22.04, Ubuntu 22.04. So basically this version, along with adding support for PHP 8.1, it's mostly efficiency and performance improvements. There's less load on the database. I think there's less memory used. It had basically a lot of performance improvements on the existing features. It didn't have many new features, which is nice to see Nextcloud working on that. I was reading recently a review where someone was like, yeah, it seems like Nextcloud just adds a bunch of features and they don't really work on the ones that are there. So it was really nice seeing this. And I agree. It was really nice to see them prioritizing efficiency and performance for this release. My next story is about Brave and Chrome. If you use Chrome, like most people, and you use Linux, like very few people, you probably use Chrome from either your package manager or you have Chrome installed as, I don't think, is it available as a snap?
I think it's only a deb, at least for Ubuntu
so
users. There's no snap.
Okay, so you probably use it as from your package manager.
Yes.
And Brave, for a while now, has had a snap. It's a community-maintained snap, so it's not part of the Brave project. But neither of these projects, Chrome nor Brave, was available as a Flatpak. And it's been years that people have been asking, hey, how come this isn't a Flatpak on both Brave and Chrome? On the issue that was in Brave's GitHub repo, that issue goes back 3.5 years. And the reason that Chrome and Brave weren't available as a Flatpak, the actual underlying problem, is that Chromium, which powers both of them, has its own sandboxing approach that did not play nicely with Flatpak's sandboxing approach. Basically, you couldn't nest the two sandboxes. So there's a project called Zypak, spelled Zypak, that lets you work around that issue. It intercepts those calls from Chromium to create a sandbox and instead creates it using Flatpak's sandbox. Which it's really cool that is available now, and a lot of the Electron apps that I like to use that require sandboxes are now using it, which is really awesome to see. And through a community effort and the FlatHub team both helping to solve this issue, Brave and Chrome are now available on Flatpak, which is really awesome to see. And because Brave was a snap and I use Brave instead of Chrome, because I do need to test I need to test the things that I write in Blink. So I have to have a browser with Blink installed, and I choose Brave for that purpose. Because that was only installable as a snap on Arch and therefore also Manjaro, which I use, I've been using Snap for years, because of that unfortunate fact. And now, since Brave is finally on Flatpak, I just last week was able to finally remove Snap from all of my PCs. So the only thing that has Snap still on it is my server, which is Ubuntu server. So I'm fine with that.
Cool. I use Brave for when we stream because it's such a good browser for when we're streaming because it blocks all the ads. It doesn't let anything autoplay. We do have some problems here and there with the random local news sites, their player not working, but I don't get any ads on YouTube from it. So it's such a useful tool, not just for me as a streamer, but anybody who kind of just wants their browser to stop these websites from doing things without you telling them to. Essentially, Brave is a really good tool for that. And more ways for more people to get it is good. I know a lot of people don't like snaps. I try not to use them, but it's for a different reason. A lot of times the pulse audio that's built into the snap doesn't play nice with jack. And so I end up having problems with that, like getting it to work right with the bridge, with the bridge from pulse audio to jack. And so that's why if I can avoid it, I don't use snaps, but it's not for the same reason. Everybody seems to hate them for some reason. I don't even care about them. I have my carry around laptop. I couldn't tell you whether or not things are on a snap, but I just wonder if Flatpak is maybe better at some of the stuff where snaps fall down. It seems snaps just, and my use case is like an edge use case, right? There's so few people doing what I'm doing with audio on Linux, so it's for most people it doesn't matter, but it's good. It's good, and also installing Brave from a PPA is a big pain.
Yeah, it's been really way too long that it hasn't worked as a Flatpak. So I'm really happy to see that it finally does.
Yeah, and if anybody out there hasn't tried Brave, I can't recommend it highly enough.
Yep.
All right, I guess it's my turn.
All right, so that's it for me. Dave, why don't you go ahead?
All right, cool. So the first story here is pretty simple. For 22.10, that's the next version of Ubuntu that's coming out. It's not the LTS. Most people aren't going to use it because once you start on, if you do 22.10, you'll probably have to go to 23.04, 23.10, and then to the LTS at 24.04. But it's nice to see that they're switching to Pipewire. For all Ubuntu distributions, they've removed Pulse Audio and from 22.10, and along with GStreamer Pulse Audio integration, and it's being replaced with a Pulse Audio to Pipewire bridge. So people's Pulse Audio applications will still work, but it'll be running through Pipewire. And we use bridges from Pulse to Jack here, and hopefully the bridge from Pulse Audio to Pipewire is less fiddly than the bridge from Pulse Audio to Jack, because we have some fiddly problems here with that every once in a while. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. One of the neat things I think is going to happen that nobody has really talked about in the articles I've seen is we may end up seeing a situation where there is no longer an Ubuntu Studio, because Pipewire will probably just replace Jack as well. And so then people will be able to do the kinds of things that we do in Ubuntu Studio without having to install a specific, like, specialized version of Ubuntu to do it. I don't want to see the Ubuntu Studio project go away, but with Pipewire coming down the line, and with this thing they have called Wire Plumber that does basically the same thing we do with Jack, it'll almost make Jack redundant in a lot of people's setups. So I unfortunately, I see it maybe having a detrimental effect on the Ubuntu Studio project, but in the end, it's better for everyone, even if it kind of is like the end of an era or whatever. And I could be wrong. The Ubuntu Studio team never like ceases to amaze, and they can maybe find new interesting ways to implement Pipewire along with Jack. And so we'll see. That was and that was my first story. I don't know. I know HK, you've kind of been following Pipewire a little bit.
Yeah, a while ago, Manjaro switched to Pipewire, so I'm running Pipewire right now, and I have no issues with it.
Oh, good.
I never really had issues with Pulse Audio, so it was a pretty transparent change, which if you're going to change a major part of an operating system, having it be transparent is a pretty astonishing feat. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And my next story is about a piece of hardware. HP is going to ship a laptop they're calling a Dev 1, and it's obviously aimed at developers based on the name. And it's going to be shipping with System 76's Pop! OS, which is kind of surprising because a lot of times, anytime these companies actually have been putting machines out with Linux on it, it's tended to be just vanilla Ubuntu because the Canonical is a big company. There's a huge community. There's just a lot of documentation. But this is good because System 76 has been building Linux laptops for a very long time. And I think they're getting some of the kind of recognition they deserve. Even though I'm not a fan of HP devices and I tend not to buy them myself, that doesn't mean that this isn't good. And here it is, the laptop. It looks like every other laptop. So that's good too, actually, that it doesn't look weird or funky.
Well, it looks a lot like a Mac. There's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah.
At least it's silvery as opposed to
it's got a nipple mouse.
Black.
It does.
That's interesting. I haven't seen anyone do the nipple mouse except for the ThinkPads.
My Dell Latitudes all have them.
Okay.
Your Dell Latitude had it.
Are those real mouse buttons on the trackpad?
Looks like it because they're there for the they're not at the bottom though. They're there for what the little nipple mouse.
Yeah.
It's around $1,100 starting. It's got an 8-core mobile Ryzen Pro processor, Radeon graphics, starts at 16 gigs of memory. The minimum storage is a terabyte of NVMe, and it's got a nice 14-inch anti-glare screen. And I think even though this is aimed at developers, Pop! OS is super user-friendly for new users, and I think this is going to end up being a pretty good first Linux laptop for a lot of people if people buy it and if it's available, because I know there's supply chain issues and whatnot, and this might not be the top priority for HP. So we'll have to see.
Those are some really, really high specs too.
For $1,100, it's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a really nice machine.
It didn't say. I couldn't find anywhere what the graphics were, and I'm guessing that it's I'm guessing that it's an APU, that it's not discrete graphics.
Yeah, if it says it's a mobile Ryzen Pro, it's probably one of the 4000 series Ryzens, like a 4800U, and that's a integrated graphics chip.
It's still not bad. We're not going to stream on it anytime soon, but it'll read the hell out of your email.
Oh, you could play games on that.
Yeah.
For sure. Like that's their APUs are really good. With I've got a couple systems that have like the integrated Vega graphics, and they're not as good as like a 1650, like a GTX 1650, but you can still certainly play games on low settings. Sometimes even medium settings. Like I could play I had one with a Ryzen 3 with integrated graphics, and I could play GTA with like medium settings.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm not a fan of HP hardware, primarily because I used to one of the things we used to do a lot of at my day job was get thousands of laptops and resell them, and like the HP laptops were just never in good shape like some of the Lenovo's and Dells were, even though they were coming from the same places, generally the same use case. The build quality just tended not to be as good. But yeah, this laptop looks great. I don't know, $1,100. If I was looking to spend $1,100 on a laptop, that's a pretty good machine.
Yeah, and based on what it says the core count is, and I just looked at the page, it says an AMD Ryzen 7 Pro processor. I'm guessing. Oh no, it's not a 4800U because that's not a Ryzen Pro. Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know what the difference is, like a Ryzen Pro on a laptop. I'm not up to date on the hardware stuff anymore, so but I don't know, it looks great. Like if the battery life's good, it's going to be a good machine for a lot of people. I don't see any reason why the battery life would be bad, so.
Yeah, the Ryzen chips are really nice in terms of battery life. They're not quite on the same level as like the 12th gen Intel chips, but they'll certainly beat like the 10th gen Intel chips.
And again, that $1,100 price point is just going to be like really attractive to a lot of people who want a machine for work but don't want to break the bank or whatever.
Yep.
That's it for my segment. That was 2 stories, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was good. We kept it nice and tight-ish. Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah. Not too bad. Little over 30 minutes.
Somebody want to read us out?
Oh, HK's reading us out intern. So go ahead.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. And we put out this show every week on sometime Wednesday afternoon-ish. And if you're watching this right after it came out, come check us out on Twitch. Dave and I do a show called Intellectual Dollar Tree there. If you like politics and left-leaning politics, check us out. We start at 7 p.m. Pacific. That's twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. And check us out on whatever your podcatcher of choice is. And check us out at Echoplex. Is it echoplexmedia.com?
That's correct.
All right.
Check out the latest story in the Defamation Times by Professor Q. He's a sociology professor, and I don't know why he's slumming it on our blog.
And remember to like and subscribe, leave us a review, mail us gifts, stalk us. No, don't do those last two, but the other ones you can.